All right, so now that we've got the insert in, we're basically ready to build the back half of the arrow. The first step we're going to do is we're going to put on our wrap. The wrap is basically there for added weight as well as color and visibility of your arrows and finding them after a shot. Now, I, along with Guy and everyone else here, like the peel-off adhesive ones. There is kind of an ancient art of dipping your arrows where it's dipped in paint, but the problem with that is it's very inconsistent unless you're very good at knowing how exactly to dip your arrows. Using something like this is the same exact application every single time, and it gives you a nice even wrap. So what you're going to do is you're going to want a mouse pad for this purpose to put this wrap on. The reason being is when you wrap this, you're going to want to make sure that no air bubbles or imperfections develop while you're pushing the arrow onto the wrap. And what the mouse pad allows it to do is allows the wrap to bend with the arrow as it's applied. So what you do is line up the back part of the arrow to where you want it to sit, apply just a little bit of pressure and roll it on there, and you can check your alignment. And that's pretty much right at the end of the arrow. That's where I'm going to want it. Put it back down on the mouse pad, apply pretty even pressure across the end of the arrow. Simply apply the back half of the wrap that you just put on, press it down, seal it, and roll it all the way forward. Once you've rolled it all the way forward, just kind of finger out the end of the crease and your wrap is on. So this is the standard Blazer wrap. They developed this wrap when they developed the Blazer vanes to kind of match with the sizing. Bowhunting makes all kinds of arrow wraps, different sizes, different colors, all different lengths, and you can really kind of narrow down your selection based on what type of vane you shoot. Some guys like really long wraps, some guys like the short ones. It's completely up to you, but definitely check out Bowhunting because they have probably the most diverse and wide range of colors and sizes. Now that we got this wrapped, it's time to put on the fletchings. Alright, so now that we've got our wrap on, it's time to actually put on the fletchings. When it comes to fletching jigs, there's all different kinds. I shoot the Blazer vanes made by Bowhunting, so therefore I use the jig that was developed for the Blazer vanes, and this is the Helix jig. It provides me with a 3 degrees of helical. As far as jigs, there's all different types out there. Probably the most famous is probably the Bitzenberger. The Bitzenberger is one of the most detailed fletching jigs out there based on how much adjustment you can give your arrows. I like the Bowhunting one for the simplicity purpose and because it's developed exactly for the Blazer vane. Pretty simple and straightforward this jig is. It's basically this is their clamp and this is their actual jig. To get started, what you're going to want to do is make sure that the back of your jig is lined up on the initial setting. This gives you a nice reference point, and you know that after 3 turns, this is going to come back exactly to center. So you're going to want to put the arrow down firmly into the knock holder and make sure that it's pressed all the way back. What can happen is this can slide forward, and every little bit of play that has will greatly affect your vanes when you go to apply them. Once you've got this pressed back firmly in, simply place the Blazer vane inside the jig. And I like to hold the vane on the back side to make sure that it pulls all the way tight. Take your glue, start at the back, and apply just an even bead all the way to the front of the arrow. Once you've got that applied, you're basically going to put the jig back on and press down. One important thing to do when you do have this is you want to make sure that these arms are slid all the way back to the back of the jig. If you have these slid forward, you're not going to have a consistent placement of your vanes every time. One thing I like to do is once I have it on the arrow, I like to simply hold it here just for a few initial seconds to make sure that my arrow is being contacted from front to back and applying even pressure. Once it's there, I can basically just let it sit. I usually like to let mine sit a couple minutes before I move on to the next vane. Another reason I prefer this jig is because 3 degrees in what I've found is almost the perfect offset for the Blazer vane and my arrow combination. The simplest way to explain helical is like rifling out of a gun barrel. It's going to stabilize the bullet, or in this case the arrow, that much more because of the rate at which it turns down the barrel and as this turns out of the bow. there is some drawbacks. The more helical you put on there, the more drag is being created, which also means there's noise associated with it. So if you're putting arrows together that have a 6, 7 degree helical, while your arrow flight is going to be incredible and your broadhead stabilization will be exactly what you want, the downside is that you're going to hear the drag. And another thing that helical does is, because of the stabilization and because of the drag it's creating, it does create a slower arrow. Now, it's not a lot, but it is noticeable. Another thing I like to do as an added sense of durability is to put a dot of glue at the front and back of each vein. The weakest point of contact on any fletched arrow with the vanes is basically at the very front and at the very back. So putting a little bit of glue at the front and back only helps increase your chances of making your vanes a little bit more durable. Alright, now that we've got our arrow completely fletched, it's time to spin test it. And spin testing is so important because you want to make sure that your arrow is going to fly true and give you the accuracy and the grouping that you're going to want out of your bow setup. So spin testing each arrow will ensure that you can visibly see that those arrows are mirror images of each other throughout the entire build process. What you're going to want to do is bring it down to the spin tester and just simply rotate your hand backwards and watch this end of the arrow with the broadhead and this end with your vanes. You should see just a perfect spin. Now this is where you're going to look for wobble, and if you would see any wobble, you're going to know right away that at some point during the arrow building process, one of your variables didn't exactly line up. So by sitting here and spin testing, you're going to find that wobble real fast, and you're going to want to make sure that you do this to all 12 arrows, because you want every arrow in your arsenal to be a mirror image of the next one. So when you actually do head to the range, or you go start shooting before the season, you can know that all 12 arrows are almost identical copies of each other, and they're all going to fly true the exact same way. Now that we've spin tested all 12 arrows, what we're going to do now is we're going to weigh and grade each one of our 12 arrows. All you need is a simple arrow scale. This is a nice digital one that I found at a sporting goods store probably a couple years back, and I really haven't found a need for a better one. So turn on the scale, put on this arrow cradle, and you're going to tear it out to make sure that that's not included in the grain weight. And once you have it set to 0, pretty much just go about to the center of the arrow, the balance point, and you're going to know real quick where that's at. And there you can see that it weighs 457.4 grains. So now that I know that, I'll take a Sharpie marker and I'll write down here on my vanes or on my wrap. Being these are colored, I'll probably write it on the vane, and I know the exact grain weight of that arrow. Repeat this process all 12 times for all 12 arrows, write them all down, and then you're going to get on to the grading process. The grading process is something that not everyone does, but it's kind of vital if you really want to know how your bow setup is working and tuning. What you're going to want to do is, on a grading scale, you can go through, calculate the front of center, calculate the grain weight, and then you can use a numbering process, you can use a lettering process. Either way, what you want to do is mark your arrows so you know that this is my #1 arrow. When it comes to the process throughout building, 1 through 5 are perfect. They all weigh 457.4 grains. They all have a front of center of 10.2%. They're mirror copies of each other. So those are going to be your 1 through 5 arrows. Now throughout the other 7, you can basically mark those however you want. Maybe those are the arrows that you practice with. But you know through the grading process that those 1 through 5 arrows are your arrows that you're going to have in your quiver this fall. Like I said, not everyone does it, but it is vital if you really want to know the exact way your bow setup is working in conjunction with your arrows. Now that we've weighed and spin tested each of our 12 arrows, we're pretty much done with the arrow building process. The only thing we have left to do is to go shoot them. Bear in mind that our process may be a little bit different than others, but this was basically just to give you 10 easy steps to arrow building. You'll find across the board that people may have a little bit different ways that they do things, but this is just a basic way to give you 10 simple steps on how to build an arrow.
Still looking to take that once-in-a-lifetime Western trophy? Eastman's Hunting and Bowhunting Journals are the #1 magazines for Western big game trophy hunters. Eastman's is the only big game hunting magazine engineered specifically for you, featuring entertaining Western hunting adventures, detailed equipment lists with head-to-head gear reviews, and species-specific tips and tactics. In the back of each subscriber issue, you'll find the exclusive Members Research section. We give you detailed statistical info, expert analysis, and advice on the hottest big game units. Act now. Subscribe to Eastman's Hunting or Bowhunting Journals, and we'll throw in our latest trophy hunting DVD absolutely free. Shipping and handling charges apply. Eastman's, getting you on track to your trophy. Get all this for less than the price of 6 rounds of ammo. Eastman's, your stories, your photos, your magazines. Call to subscribe or get it digitally now.